Alright, what's going on, Forgotten Nation? I'm your host, Def G, and today we're looking at Quartet II. And this game doesn't sound familiar? I don't blame you, because up until now, I've never even heard of this arcade game. But what I do know is that it was a SEGA game released in arcades in 1986. And whether it did come to America, I actually really don't know. The only thing I do know is that Quartet II isn't so much of a sequel rather than an improvement of the original Quartet, which only makes two major changes compared to the original game. The first being the ability to switch characters when you use a continue, and the second removing the ability to play with 4 players and only 2. Now that it matters here because we're playing on the SEGA Astro City Mini, if I get into camera view here, which means that unless we buy a proprietary controller, because that's the only way you could play with more than one person on the Astro City Mini, we only got one player here. And then again, one and only, baby. So let's not waste any more time to try and explain what we have here. We're going to quarter up and let the game tell us what it is we need to do. And this is actually pretty cool. Oh, but first, we're going to choose a character. Each character is different, but I'll explain as we get to the gameplay. Destroy the boss. Only a key opens the door. And that's the main objective of the game. The objective simply is to go stage by stage, trying to take out the boss in order to get the key to move on to the next stage. So, fairly arcade typical in terms of progression. But now let me try to explain a little more. We have up to 4 playable characters, and the first we're playing as is Edgar. More likely than not, I will die in this game, so I'll try to show off all 4 of them. Each character has a unique blaster, which can be changed with a certain pickup on the stage, but for what you have is what you get. In the case of Edgar, he has this more of an arch kind of laser beam. There is no real difference in terms of power as far as I can tell, so you're not really going to have any disadvantage for a given character. It all comes down to playstyle, unless you get the ability we'll probably pick up in a little bit. Apart from that, the gameplay is the same for every character. You're able to run, jump, shoot, and you're just really trying to survive. We are in outer space, which appears to be on the brink of a metal apocalypse. As with the boss and everything we see all around us, I would say this is a dystopian. I don't know what could have led us getting to this point in time, but things have clearly gone wrong that the world is being invaded by these robots, even in outer space. Okay, to the right is the item that does change our shooter, but we didn't grab it. But at the end of the stage, we have the presentation ceremony, so I'll gladly take that Medal of Honor. But then we go straight to the next stage. This is the core loop of Quartet II. Nothing too advanced. It works well with the game that we have. Now, whether it's going to get the attention of those in the arcades up for debate, I want to say this game is very similar to something along the lines of Gauntlet, where it's rapidly changing each time you go to a new stage, and you have different abilities with the characters in the terms of the blasters. But you also have stage gimmicks too, such as right now we're using the jetpack, but if we want, we can swap that for something like these shoes that make us run faster. And while we can't double up, more often than not, you can only equip one thing at a time when you're playing with more than one person. So it comes down to choosing who wants to use what ability. Are you going to be at a disadvantage? Do you want to try to play on equal terms? So there is that little bit of cooperation. As you can see on the top left though, we have a very rapidly flashing power meter, which means we are on the brink of death. So I'm hoping I actually live here to tell the tale. Come on. And that's game over. So we're going to quarter up again after we type our name. B. Going N. One more. M. And then we're going to change characters. So we're going to go from Edgar and let's go sequential. We're going to go to Mary next. So Mary's ability is, actually I believe we had this equipped already. It's more of a rapid fire with up to 3 beams. But as I was saying before, the game comes down to who's going to use what at a given time, whether one person should have more, one person should have less, whether you're going to be on equal playing grounds. So there's quite a bit of different ways you can approach it. But the one thing I'm really unsure about, even playing now, is how the game treats the health system. As you saw on the top left with the flashing health, I don't understand what gets you to a point where you're either low on health, whether you have enough health. I don't see it. All I know is that when it starts flashing, that means you are on the brink of death, and you better get as far as you can within that time you have left. That's the only real aspect in this game that I feel is a bit unfair. The fact that I don't understand the health system at all. And whether I'm doing good, or whether I'm very close to dying, I don't think the game ever really does make that clear. So it's one of those where you're probably going to burn quarters, and it's just not fair. In comparison to Gauntlet, where your health is tied to the timer, at the very least your health is always decreasing, but it makes it very clear that it's decreasing. Here, I can only assume that unless it's because I'm getting attacked by enemies, which you think would normally be the case, I don't know why at certain times it shows I have more or less. I don't know if it's based on how far I travel, whether it's I'm not picking up enough items. The game never makes it clear just how much health I have left. I think that's the biggest flaw with Quartet II, is the health system. Otherwise, I would recommend it. I would call it one of those like forgotten games that anyone could really pick up, but it just seems really unfair. Not to mention the flashing lights. I know I made a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, but there's a lot of flashing in this game between the health, when you get the key after destroying the boss. I don't think this is something just a casual gamer might pick up, unless they know about the flashing, because that's kind of dangerous, if I'm being honest. There's plenty of worse arcade games that do the same thing. I would say this one's more tame in comparison, but it is a thing that needs to be watched out for. I mean it. Stuff like this can be dangerous. I really am curious though if this ever did come out in America. It probably did, and I probably don't know, but the fact that I've never heard of it up until now, and to be a SEGA game of all things, I kind of think that speaks mediums about where this game ended up in some regard. In some ways, though, you could say that it's a very modern topic. Robots, collapsing society, I would say we're almost there. No though, we're always trying to advance our technology, and the fact that one day's robots, AI, any of that stuff will become autonomous to a point where it may replace us altogether can be pretty alarming. I know there's a lot of people that fear this kind of dystopia. Up next, we're going to swap to Joe. And Joe's ability is this very quick rapid-fire beam that's very small, but does travel pretty fast. I'd call it fast. But no, I feel like for some people it's a rational fear that we are getting to a point where machines can become smarter than us, and the day that they reject what we have to tell them, it's going to be a very scary day. For reference, I recommend you check out Detroit Become Human. All serious though, I don't think it will ever get to that point, but I do think that one day, at least the way we're seeing it now, there will be tasks that robots do replace compared to what we have to offer. I mean, it's just the natural progression of things. We're developing technologies that have improved over time. So what reason is there that one day it'll be doing everything for us? I would like to think the best comparison is the old Hanna-Barbera show, The Jetsons. But another thing I love about this game is that sci-fi aesthetic, especially here where everything's in chrome. Don't you know? Everything in the future is chrome. But no, environment-wise, it really does give off that metallic vibe, aside from just being a alien planet. So that's fun. I actually do like that. I imagine this game is probably made for multiplayer in mind, especially again with the abilities I mentioned earlier, but just the cooperation and the way you go about the stage. Because I feel like having more players can make the game more difficult in the long run. Whereas here, since it's only me, I can just focus on what's ahead and not so much of what's happening. Where, if you're playing with others, you may want to be more strategic. That's just how I feel about it, but to each their own, I suppose. And again, Astro City Mini, I'm hoping someone eventually hacks this thing. Not only to put some games on here to the American versions, because Wonder Boy 2 is going to be a real pain. But even just the controllers. I can't use the 8-bit controller. I can't use the Sega Genesis Mini controllers. It's an exclusive medium here that only lets me use what's on deck. And that really sucks. It really sucks. Now we have conveyor belts and things are getting much more chaotic. I should mention that there's over 36 levels in the game, but it does have a loop, which means after level 36 you need to play through the game again if it has an ending. I don't know if the game has an ending, but considering it does have a set amount of levels, there's gotta be something waiting on the other end. It's not the first game to be like this. We did cover Flicky was another game that has a kind of loop. As well as some later games we'll be checking out. One very soon, as a matter of fact. But it's just important to know that that's a thing. Our last character to show off is Lee, and Lee has a type of wave beam, which is probably great for defense because it's slightly bigger, I suppose. Alright, let's try to focus on surviving, as long as we can anyways. So, aside from the health system, as I mentioned, just try to survive is the best way to put it. Try not to get hit as much. You'll always want to try to go for some of the upgrades that show up, whether it's the jetpack, whether it's the boots. The best thing you do, though, is be aware of the environment. Especially if enemies start to flood the stage, that might be a sign to go for the small enemies first, since they're always starting to stockpile through these gates that are always all over the place. Though, you do need to take out the boss to proceed, so sometimes you might want to focus on the boss more. Otherwise, we're going to be here for a while. But no, the game gets harder. We have, I would call this bootleg Gallispark. But perfect. We got the key, so let's find the door. And hopefully try to get one more reward ceremony before we hit hay. Keep moving. That's the other thing too. I mean, there's some real diversity to the stage design. So I want to say they knew what they were doing when they made this game, but just one flaw, in my opinion, hinders the experience. If I just knew about how the health system works, it wouldn't be that bad, I think. Interesting characters, unique abilities. This should have been a Prime Arcade game, but even leading up to the research for this gameplay session, I don't see anyone talking about this one. Barely any gameplay footage online aside through a couple of gameplay walkthroughs. But I haven't seen anything as far as like the history of the game, those that were like behind it. I do want to know more about the creation of this game, as well as maybe even the original Quartet, even though it's just those couple of differences. I feel like this really is a forgotten game, and I'm actually really glad to be able to cover this one and talk over it. This is what I wanted from the very beginning of my channel, to try to find games like these where not a whole lot of people may talk about them, but they probably do have some sort of nostalgia factor to them. Again, the only real complaint I have is the health system. Other than that, I feel like this is a good arcade game, and it's Sega, so that screams for some quality otherwise. But whether you love it, you hate it, or if you even remember it at all, power to you. But that's going to do it for this gameplay session of Quartet II. If you like this gameplay session, be sure to leave a like and comment down below. As always, I'll see you in the next video. And again, we're getting really close to the day they take over. I mean, look at Amazon, look at Google, look at Bixby. They're everywhere.